If you think you might be interested in a career in finance but don't know where to start, then this could be the video for you. Hey guys, welcome back to ASURE, and in today's video I wanted to cover exactly how I would familiarize myself with the financial knowledge and technical skills needed to ace my investment banking interviews and assessment centers and get that oh so lucrative offer. I'm literally going to name drop, as far as my memory permits, every single resource that I used myself when I was applying a few years ago, and I'll also try and add in any supplementary resource that I've found more recently that I think might be useful. Without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Alright, before we get into technicals, it's first super important that you start reading up around general financial news and what's happening in the economy right now. The easiest, least painful way of doing this that I've found is to just start listening to 1 or 2 finance podcasts on something like Spotify or Apple Music. My 2 favorites are the FT News Briefing, which is a 6 to 7 minute podcast which is released pretty much every single weekday, and it's really good for giving you a summary of the biggest things that are happening both financially and in the general economy. And then secondly, the Economist podcast. There are quite a few released, again, I think every single day. This one is slightly less finance focused and more about economic developments around the world, but still super interesting to listen to. In addition to these podcasts, if you're a student, whether that's at school or university, it's quite likely that your institution has a subscription to the full online version of the Financial Times or The Economist, in which case try and get the login details and read the full length articles of the things that you might have just heard over the podcast. The podcasts do a great job of giving you the high level information, but if you want the proper in-depth details of it, you need to look at it online in the proper article. Alright, now moving on to beginner technicals. Now, finance is an industry that is well known for its use of jargon. We like to use really complicated sounding words for concepts that honestly aren't all that difficult once you've read through them once or twice. For full transparency, I did study GCSE business studies and did do A-level economics, which meant that I was at least familiar with concepts like revenue, cost of goods sold, operating expenses, gross profit, and net profit. If you don't know what those terms are, I would start there. A quick Google search will literally tell you everything you need to know. And now for my first kind of website recommendation, INVESTOPEDIA.com, which is, believe me, going to be your Bible when it comes to reading up on finance. If there is ever a term that you come across and don't understand, and believe me, it happens to me every single day, even now that I've joined a financial firm, I would immediately recommend that you go and look it up on Investopedia, read through the article, watch the video that they have on it, and hopefully that will give you enough detail for you to start understanding that concept. So overall, I would recommend that you get familiar with the line items, i.e. the different components of the 3 financial statements. That is, the income statement, the cash flow statement, and the balance sheet. For this, there are plenty of YouTube videos and channels which you can refer to, as well as full courses on platforms such as Coursera or edX, which are completely free for you to try out and audit. I've got the link in the description below to one by the Wharton School of Business, which seems pretty good in case you're interested. If it were up to me, I would personally go through the YouTube videos first, simply because it will keep you quite streamlined in what you need to know rather than just learning absolutely everything. Don't get me wrong, you will need to know all this information when you start the full-time job, but for the purposes of the interview, and if you're just a first or second year university student, it's not necessary for you to know the entire thing, so just keep it quite streamlined. Okay, so if you're at this stage, the 2 YouTube channels I would recommend you refer to would be the accounting stuff, which is a really good grasp of getting you that accounting knowledge, and the Money Week, which starts introducing you to some basic financial concepts like time value of money and discounting. When you do go and cover all this stuff, make sure to make a note of what things you've learned, otherwise you're just going to forget it by the time your interview comes around. Alright, before I get any further into technicals, I think it's really important, if you are interested in finance, to understand what the different components or parts of the finance industry do and how they're all interlinked. For example, this could be things like understanding what the different divisions of an investment bank do, what the difference between buy and sell side are, what the difference between private equity is and investment banking, all this sort of stuff. Again, you can find most of this information on the internet. Investopedia will broadly have you covered with all of this information, as well as a few other websites. Again, links will be in the description. However, I learned pretty well by watching videos, especially on slightly less technical topics like this one. A great YouTube channel for this is Afzal Hussain, who's arguably the GOAT of kind of finance as a careers YouTuber. He's done plenty and plenty of videos on this topic. Be sure to check him out if you haven't already. There's also a video by a guy called Paul Pignataro. You can find it on YouTube. The video is pretty old. I think it's like 10 or 11 years old now. The audio is a bit dodgy, but the content is gold, and it's what I personally used when I was applying. So really recommend that you check that out. When you watch this stuff, it will help you understand what part of the investment bank are you actually interested in applying to. And therefore, what technicals do you need to properly focus on? The technicals that you'd need, for example, for investment banking are completely different to sales and trading. And so once you've watched videos like this, you can start honing in on the specific technicals that you will need to know for the job that you're interested in. Okay, so once you know your way around the beginner technicals, so you know things like EBITDA, CapEx, net working capital, free cash flow, then you can start moving on to the more intermediate and advanced technical knowledge. My most recommended resource when you're at this stage is to start going through the Wall Street OASIS' 400-page technical guide. I found this guide to be the most straightforward or easy to pick up once I'd learned the bare basics. To be honest, you could probably actually start implementing or looking at it even when you're doing the basic technicals, just because you can have a read of the guide and see if you've got enough knowledge to actually start answering those questions. If you don't, you might need to still do some more research. If you do, you can start gradually transitioning over to using that guide. That technical guide will basically have a bunch of questions that are typically asked during investment banking interviews with the answers directly below it. The answers are super straightforward and simple to follow. They're kind of explained from first principles, and so because of that, it was really easy or really intuitive for me to pick up. And thankfully, the guide is split up into kind of beginner, intermediate, and advanced, so you can kind of start progressing through the different levels of difficulty as well. Some other useful videos and resources are breaking into Wall Street's technical guide, which is a little bit more scary and a little bit more advanced, especially to pick off right off the bat. And similarly, Rosenbaum's Guide to Investment Banking, again, quite comprehensive, more technical. I would only go through those sorts of things once you've read through the Wall Street OASIS 400-pager. In terms of videos, Paul Penutaro, i.e. the same guy I mentioned in the previous section, has a bunch of videos on the valuation aspects of finance, which I found pretty useful back in the day. And similarly, Breaking into Wall Street on their actual website have some free video tutorials that you can go through, especially if you want to start thinking about things like Excel. Finally, there was a YouTube channel called The High Finance Graduate. I think they've now renamed the channel to the guy's actual name, which is Nazir Ramjan. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but he did a bunch of videos on basic investment banking technical interview questions and how to answer them. I found those really, really helpful back in the day. By the way, most of these resources should be available online, floating around on forums and things, which you can just download for free, so shouldn't be any issues there. And that wraps up today's video. It was just a few quick set of suggestions or pointers on some resources that might help you in your journey entering into the world of finance. If you did enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends if you think they might also find it useful. And let me know in the comment section down below what else you'd like to see from me going forward. Thanks guys, and see you soon.